The nurse hadn't even removed the IV when my wife told me she'd filed the papers. My name is Alan Richter. I'm 48 years old. Been running night shifts at the warehouse in Bloomington for 12 years. You work a machine long enough, you know when it's dying. I was still tasting metal from the chemo when Emily walked into that hospital room. Her heels clicked against the floor like a countdown timer. Alan, we need to talk. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Outside, Minnesota snow pressed against the windows like it was trying to get in. Inside, the silence stretched between us like a frozen lake. She didn't sit down, just stood there holding a manila folder. Filed for divorce yesterday. The words hung in the air like smoke. I didn't move, didn't blink, just watched her fidget with that folder like it held the deed to my soul. What do you say to something like that? Your wife of 16 years picks the day after your first chemo session to tell you she's done. Timing like that doesn't just happen. I need to feel alive, Alan. There it was. The line she'd probably practiced in the mirror. I could see it in her eyes. She'd rehearsed this moment, planned it out while I was getting poison pumped into my veins. Chase thinks. She stopped herself, but it was too late. Chase Wilburn, her personal trainer, 28 years old with abs you could crack walnuts on. I'd met him twice at the gym, called me sir and shook my hand like he meant it. Guess what? He didn't. I still didn't say anything. What was the point? When a machine breaks down, you don't argue with it. You just replace it. Emily set the folder on the bedside table. The papers are in there. You should probably get a lawyer. She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. For a second, I thought she might say something else. Maybe explain why she couldn't wait until I was dead to start over. Instead, she just walked out. Her heels echoed down the hallway until the sound disappeared completely. I sat there for 20 minutes after she left. The IV drip kept counting down, one drop at a time. Outside, the snow kept falling. The nurse came back eventually, young kid, probably fresh out of school. She removed the IV and asked if I needed anything. Just a ride home. 3 days later, Emily moved out, took her clothes, her books, her coffee maker, left behind 16 years of marriage photos and a half-empty bottle of shampoo in the shower. By the end of the week, she was living with Chase. Here's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't hit you all at once. It seeps in slow, like water through a cracked foundation. First you notice the cold, then the damage. I went back to work the next Monday. Same shift, same routine. The guys on my crew didn't say much. Word travels fast in a warehouse. They knew about the cancer. They knew about Emily. Nobody asked questions. That's blue-collar respect right there. 2 weeks passed. Emily called once to ask about insurance paperwork. Her voice sounded different, lighter, like she'd been holding her breath for years and finally let it out. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Still dying." She hung up. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went through the old desk in the spare bedroom, bottom drawer, under a stack of tax returns. There was a folder I'd put together 18 months ago, back when I thought a heart attack might take me out at the warehouse. False alarm, turned out. But for 3 days, I was sure I was done. That's when you learn who people really are, when they think you might not be around much longer. I opened the folder. Insurance papers, bank statements, and something else. A printed email. I'd forgotten about it. From Chase Wilburn to Emily. Subject: when he's not around anymore. I stared at that subject line. The date stamp showed it was sent 14 months ago, right around the time of my heart scare. My hands didn't shake when I opened it. They should have. But when you've spent years fixing broken machinery, you learn to work with steady hands, even when everything's falling apart. The email was short, sweet, full of plans they'd made for after I was gone. The cabin up north, the life insurance payout, the freedom they'd have once I was out of the picture. Those were Chase's exact words, out of the picture. I folded the email back up, put it in the folder. closed the drawer. Then I sat in my kitchen for a long time, listening to the refrigerator hum and thinking about timing. You know what the worst part was? I wasn't even surprised. When you work nights for 12 years, you learn to see in the dark. You notice things other people miss. The way Emily started going to the gym more often. The way she stopped asking about my doctor appointments. The way she looked at me like I was already gone. Maybe I'd seen the signs all along. I just never thought she'd be in such a hurry to collect. But here's what Emily didn't know about machines. Sometimes when they break down, they take other things with them. I found out the truth about timing 3 weeks after Emily left. My old will was sitting in the same folder as that email, dated 2 years ago, back when we still said goodnight to each other. Back when I thought 16 years of marriage meant something. The will left everything to Emily. The house, the cabin, my pension, even the truck. Here's the thing about dying. It makes you realize how stupid you've been about living. I called Matt Keller on a Tuesday night. We'd worked construction together 15 years ago, before he got smart and went back to school. Used to set up estate plans for rich folks until the economy tanked. Now he drives semis and drinks gas station coffee, but his brain still works like a lawyer. Alan, Jesus, man. Heard about the cancer. How you holding up? I need help with something. Matt lived in a duplex 20 minutes from the warehouse. When I got there, he was on his porch smoking a cigarette, wearing coveralls with Peterson Trucking stitched on the pocket. You look like hell, he said. Feel worse. We went inside. His kitchen table was covered with invoices and coffee stains. Matt cleared a space and I handed him the folder. He read through everything. The will, the insurance papers, that email from Chase. When he finished, he set the papers down and looked at me. She's already gone, right? Moved in with him last week. Then why the hell are you leaving her anything? That's what I liked about Matt. No sugarcoating, just straight talk. What do you mean? This'll make her rich the day you die. She walks out on you during chemo, shacks up with her boyfriend, and still gets to cash in when you're gone. Matt shook his head. That's not justice, Alan. That's just stupid. We worked until 2 a.m. Matt knew the law like I knew warehouse machinery. Every moving part, every way it could break down. We need a clause, he said, typing on his laptop. Spousal abandonment during terminal illness. If she leaves you while you're dying, she gets nothing. How do we prove abandonment? Medical records, witness statements. Hell, that email helps too. Shows premeditation. But here's where it got interesting. We needed a backup beneficiary. Someone to inherit if Emily got disqualified. Got any kids? Siblings? Matt asked. No family left. Charity? I was about to say the Cancer Foundation when I remembered something. A night 6 weeks ago, before the divorce papers. Before I knew how deep the betrayal ran. It was 3 a.m. I was sitting in my truck outside the hospital after a chemo session that went bad. Real bad. The kind that makes you wonder if the cure is worse than the disease. I had a bottle of sleeping pills in the glove compartment. Been carrying them around for weeks, just in case. That night, I opened the bottle and counted them out in my palm. 24 pills, more than enough. Then someone knocked on my window. Sandy Monroe, 56 years old, breast cancer survivor getting her 6-month checkup. I'd seen her in the waiting room before but never talked to her. She was holding a thermos. You okay, honey? I rolled down the window, put the pills back in the bottle real quick. Just tired. Soup, she said, unscrewing the thermos cap. My grandmother's recipe. Helps with the nausea. She poured soup into a ceramic cup and handed it to me. Then she walked around to the passenger side and got in. Didn't ask permission, just sat there while I sipped the soup. We didn't talk much. She told me about her daughter in nursing school. I told her about the warehouse. Normal stuff, nothing deep. But she stayed. For an hour, she just sat there with a stranger who was thinking about checking out early. She never knew what she interrupted. I never told her. When I finished the soup, she took the cup back. Same time next week? Yeah. She'd been showing up every week since, never missed a session, never asked questions about why Emily stopped coming. She just stayed. Sandy Monroe, I told Matt. She's getting my chemo treatments too. Friend of yours? Something like that. Matt typed her name into the laptop. Okay, so if Emily gets disqualified, everything goes to Sandy. House, cabin, pension, the works. How much are we talking about? Matt pulled out a calculator and started adding. House value, life insurance, pension fund, the cabin up north. About $400,000, give or take. $400,000. That's what 16 years of marriage was worth on paper. Emily would get all of it, just for outliving me. Unless she didn't. Will this hold up in court? I asked. If we do it right, yeah. The abandonment clause is solid. She filed for divorce the day after your first chemo. That's not coincidence. That's calculation. We finished the paperwork as the sun came up. Matt printed 3 copies and had me sign each one. Then he sealed one copy in an envelope marked Addendum A. What's in there? Sandy's name. If the abandonment clause gets triggered, this gets opened, and she inherits everything. I drove home as the morning shift was starting at the warehouse. Guys I'd worked with for years heading in to move boxes and fix machines. Regular people living regular lives. Emily was different. She'd always wanted more than regular. The cabin was supposed to be our retirement dream. 20 acres on a lake, 2 hours north. We'd bought it 5 years ago, with money I'd saved working double shifts. Now it would belong to Sandy, a woman who gave soup to strangers in hospital parking lots. You know what the funny thing was? I wasn't doing this out of spite. Not really. Emily made her choice. She wanted to feel alive, so she walked away from something dying. That's human nature. I couldn't blame her for that. But Sandy made a different choice. Every Tuesday for 6 weeks, she chose to sit with someone who had nothing to offer her except company. She chose to stay. That's worth something. That's worth everything. Matt called me 3 days later. Papers are filed. The abandonment clause is active as of yesterday. Your doctor signed off on the medical documentation. What happens now? Now we wait. If Emily tries to claim inheritance after you're gone, the clause kicks in. Everything goes to Sandy instead. I hung up and sat in my kitchen, looking out at the snow. Emily's coffee maker was gone, but I could still smell her shampoo in the bathroom. 16 years of marriage, reduced to legal paperwork and abandonment clauses. But here's what Emily didn't understand about staying power. It's not about love. It's not even about loyalty. It's about showing up when showing up is hard. Sandy showed up. Every week, rain or shine, she sat in that waiting room and made sure I wasn't alone. Emily showed up too, with divorce papers and a new address. The difference between them wasn't complicated. One walked toward something difficult. The other walked away from it. Guess which one was about to inherit my life's work? Emily thought she was getting a head start on her new life. What she didn't know was that she'd already lost the race. Some things you can't time, and some things you can't take back. She was about to learn the difference. 6 months later, I was still alive. The doctors called it stable but declining. I called it borrowed time. The chemo kept the cancer from spreading, but it wasn't winning the war, just slowing down the inevitable. Emily was thriving online. Her Instagram feed looked like a wellness magazine. Green smoothies, yoga poses, inspirational quotes about choosing yourself. The comments were full of women cheering her on for finding her strength. Chase appeared less and less in her posts. Guess the novelty wore off. I didn't follow her account. Sandy showed me once during chemo, thinking it might help me understand why Emily left. It didn't. Some people post their healing, others just heal. Tuesday morning, I was getting my blood drawn when I overheard 2 nurses talking at the station. The IVF billing is getting complicated, one said. Insurance lapsed last month, but the procedure was approved in March. Whose case? Emily Richter. Used to be married to the cancer patient in room 4. I kept my face blank. Room 4 was mine. When was the procedure? March 15th. right before the insurance expired. Lucky timing. Lucky timing. There it was again. After the appointment, I called the insurance company. Took 3 transfers and 40 minutes on hold, but I got the details. Emily had used my insurance to pay for in vitro fertilization. The procedure cost $18,000, approved 2 days before our divorce was finalized. The donor wasn't listed, but the timing told the story. She'd been planning this for months. You know what hit me hardest? It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was the efficiency. She'd used me to pay for a baby with another man, then walked away clean. That night, I drove to the cabin. The place looked different in late fall. Bare trees, frozen lake, silence that cut right through you. Emily and I had planned to retire here, spend our golden years watching the seasons change. I built a fire and sat in the old leather chair we'd bought at an estate sale. On the coffee table, I spread out the paperwork Matt had given me. The new will, the abandonment clause. Addendum A, with Sandy's name sealed inside. Then I opened my phone to Emily's latest post. It was an ultrasound photo, black and white, grainy, with an arrow pointing to a tiny shape in the center. The caption read, "Sometimes the best gifts come from the hardest decisions. New beginnings. Choosing life." 200 likes, 50 comments, all congratulations and heart emojis. I stared at that photo for a long time, not in anger, just in blankness, like looking at a math problem that doesn't add up. This was the child they'd built while I was dying. Conceived with my money, carried by my wife, fathered by the man who called me sir. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the old bottle of sleeping pills. Still had them, 6 months later. Never threw them away, never used them. We just carried them around like a safety net. I opened the bottle and counted them again. 24 pills. Same as before, but something was different this time. On the kitchen counter, I saw the ceramic soup cup Sandy had given me that first night. I'd brought it to the cabin last month and forgot to take it home. The cup was cream-colored with tiny blue flowers around the rim. Hand-painted, probably homemade. The kind of thing someone's grandmother would make. I looked at the pills in my palm, then at that cup. Here's what I realized. Emily wasn't the only one who'd been making choices. I'd been choosing too. Every Tuesday for 6 months, I chose to show up for chemo. Every night, I chose to go home instead of ending it. Every morning, I chose to get up and keep going. Not because I was brave, not because I had hope. Because some things are worth finishing, right? I walked to the fireplace and poured the pills into the flames. They dissolved in the heat like snow, leaving nothing behind but smoke. Not out of strength, out of refusal. I sat back down and pulled out a piece of paper, wrote a letter in my careful handwriting. To the boy they built with my name and my money. I was never part of your story. I was just the receipt. I folded it, put it in an envelope and sealed it. Then I added it to the folder with everything else. The next morning, I drove to the drugstore and bought a thank you card. Plain white, no flowers or fancy script. Just blank space for whatever you needed to say. Inside, I wrote, "Thank you for making everything so clear." Then I tucked in a copy of the new will. Not the original, just a photocopy showing the abandonment clause and the reference to Addendum A. I mailed it to Emily's new address. 3 days later, my phone rang. "What the hell is this supposed to mean?" Emily's voice was sharp, like it used to get when she was frustrated with a design client. "Just wanted to say thanks." "Thanks for what?" "For showing me who you really are." Silence on the other end. Then, "This will thing is bullshit. You can't just cut me out because you're bitter." "I'm not cutting you out. You cut yourself out. I'll fight this in court." "Good luck with that." She hung up. Matt called me that afternoon. "Your ex-wife contacted a lawyer. They're claiming the abandonment clause is invalid. Will it hold?" "With the medical records and that email from her boyfriend, plus the IVF timing? Yeah, it'll hold." She screwed herself with the paper trail. 2 weeks later, Emily started making moves on the cabin, put it up for sale through a realtor, posted photos online, even scheduled a showing. I let her try. But here's the thing about ownership. It's not about possession. It's about control. I'd never signed the title release. The cabin was still joint property, which meant she couldn't sell without my signature. When the buyers tried to close, escrow flagged the incomplete paperwork. The sale fell through. Emily called Matt directly, threatening to sue. He was polite but clear. The abandonment clause was already active. The moment she filed for divorce during my terminal care, she'd triggered it. The doctor had signed off on everything: spousal abandonment during terminal illness, medical abandonment during cancer treatment. The documentation was bulletproof. Addendum A was sealed and ready for probate. What happens now? I asked Matt. Now we wait for the inevitable. When you're gone, the will gets read, the clause gets enforced, everything goes to Sandy. I drove home through the Minnesota winter, thinking about timing and choices and the difference between justice and revenge. Emily thought she'd outsmarted everyone. Divorced me, kept the benefits, started over with a younger man and a new baby. What she didn't realize was that I'd been watching the whole time, learning her patterns, understanding her moves. You work a machine long enough, you know when it's about to break down. Emily had been breaking down for months. I just gave her the space to do it completely. She wanted to feel alive? Fine. She was about to feel very alive indeed. I was too weak to attend my own will reading. The cancer had won most of the battles by late spring. I could barely make it from the bed to the kitchen without stopping to rest. Driving to the courthouse was out of the question. Matt came to see me the night before, brought coffee and legal papers, sat at my kitchen table like we were planning another construction job, instead of the final act of my life. "You sure you don't want to be there?" he asked. "I've seen enough courtrooms. Besides, Emily might actually speak her mind if I'm not around to intimidate her." Matt laughed. "You? Intimidating? You're 90 pounds soaking wet. Dying men make people nervous." The next morning, Matt drove to the courthouse while I stayed home, dozing in my recliner and waiting for the phone to ring. It rang at 11:47 a.m. "It's done," Matt said. His voice sounded different. Satisfied, maybe. Like a job well finished. "How'd it go? You want the play-by-play or just the highlights?" "Everything." So Matt told me everything. Emily had arrived 15 minutes early, wearing black and confidence. Her lawyer looked expensive, probably cost more per hour than I made in a day at the warehouse. Sandy was already there when they walked in, gray cardigan, hands folded, sitting next to Matt like she was waiting for a doctor's appointment instead of inheriting $400,000. "Did they talk to each other?" I asked. "Not a word." Emily kept checking her phone. Sandy just watched the judge. Chase didn't show up. Smart move, probably. Nothing good could come from being there when the music stopped. Judge Harrison started reading at exactly 10 o'clock. Standard language, legal formalities. The kind of words that make simple things sound complicated. Emily perked up when he got to the inheritance section. "To my spouse, Emily Christine Richter, I leave nothing." Matt said the silence was so thick you could cut it with a knife. "And what?" The judge explained the abandonment clause, medical documentation from Dr. Wells, witness statements, timeline showing she filed for divorce the day after your first chemo. I closed my eyes and pictured Emily's face, the moment she realized her careful planning had backfired. What did she say? Nothing at first, just sat there like someone had unplugged her brain. Her lawyer tried to object, but the paperwork was bulletproof. Then came the moment I'd been waiting 8 months to hear about. Judge Harrison opened the sealed envelope. Addendum A, the name I'd chosen when I still thought I might not see Chris. Sandra Monroe. How did Sandy react? Like she always does. Quiet. Didn't gasp or cry or make a scene. Just lowered her head a little, like someone had handed her a responsibility she didn't want, but would accept. That sounded exactly like Sandy, taking on weight without complaining about it. And Emily? Stared at Sandy like she was trying to solve a puzzle. This woman she'd never met, about to inherit everything Emily thought was hers. Matt told me about Emily's lawyer trying to contest, about the judge explaining Sandy's presence during my treatment, about the simple question that ended it all. Miss Monroe, do you accept the inheritance as outlined in this will? Sandy's answer was 2 words, I do. Like a wedding vow, a promise to carry something forward. Emily say anything after that? Yes. Just this isn't over. As they were leaving, Sandy looked at her once, then walked away. I hung up and sat in my kitchen, thinking about justice and timing, and the difference between earning something and expecting it. Over the next few days, Matt kept me updated on the aftermath. Emily started posting on social media again, vague messages about betrayal and stolen futures, but the response wasn't what she expected. Word had gotten out. Cancer patient's wife files for divorce the day after chemo, moves in with trainer, uses dying husband's insurance for IVF with boyfriend. Her inspirational posts were met with silence. Her calls for support went unanswered. People understand abandonment, Matt told me. They know what it means to walk away when someone needs you. 2 weeks later, a local blogger picked up the story. Small publication, maybe 5,000 readers, but stories like this spread fast online. The headline said everything. She left him after chemo. He left it all to the woman who stayed. Emily tried to control the narrative, posted her side, talked about toxic relationships and emotional abuse and choosing yourself. Nobody bought it. The timeline was too clear. Here's what happened to my inheritance. Sandy used part of it to create the Staying Kind Fund. Grants for caregivers, support for families dealing with terminal illness, help for people who choose to stay when staying gets hard. The cabin became a retreat center, a place where exhausted nurses and family caregivers could go to rest and remember why they do what they do. Matt drove up there last month to check on the renovations. Said Sandy kept the stone fireplace, updated the kitchen, added a screened porch overlooking the lake. She's making it into something beautiful, he told me, something that honors what it represents. Which is what? Commitment that doesn't break down when things get difficult. Last week, Matt told me Emily had driven by the cabin. Sandy was on the new porch, reading in a rocking chair. Emily slowed down, maybe thinking about stopping, about explaining or apologizing or demanding something. Sandy looked up from her book, saw Emily's car on the road. She didn't wave, didn't acknowledge her at all, just went back to reading. Emily drove away. That's the difference, I told Matt. People who stay don't need an audience for their commitment. And people who leave, they spend their whole lives performing for approval they'll never get. Tonight, I'm sitting in my kitchen for maybe the last time. The house feels different now that I know Sandy will inherit it. Lighter, somehow, like it's already moving toward better hands. Emily wanted to feel alive. She got her wish, along with the knowledge that walking away cost her everything. Sandy never asked for anything, just showed up every Tuesday with soup and silence. Some rewards you earn without trying, others you lose by trying too hard. I never intended this as revenge, not really. I just wanted to make sure the right person got what mattered. The woman who stayed when staying was hard. The woman who sat with a stranger in a hospital parking lot at 3 a.m. The woman who understood that sometimes the best thing you can give someone is your presence, no questions asked. Emily ran toward feeling alive. Sandy walked towards someone who was dying. Guess which choice built something worth inheriting? Tomorrow, Matt's driving me to the cabin for the last time. I want to see what Sandy's done with the place. Want to sit by that fireplace and know that good people will keep warming themselves there long after I'm gone. Emily said she needed to feel alive. I just needed to die. Right. And thanks to Sandy, I think I can. My final days were spent in the house Emily and I had shared for 16 years. The doctors said weeks, maybe a month. The cancer had spread everywhere it could go. No more treatments, no more hope. Just time. I was alone in the living room. the way I wanted it. Matt had helped me set up a hospital bed near the big window that looked out on the backyard. From there, I could watch the seasons change without having to move much. Spring was trying to break through the Minnesota winter. Snow melting, grass showing green underneath. The world waking up while I was shutting down. I kept a small fire going in the fireplace most days. Emily used to complain about the mess, the smell, the work it took to clean out the ashes. Now I could burn whatever I wanted. The mail came every day. Bills I'd never have to pay, legal papers from Matt, nothing important. Then, on a Tuesday that felt like every other Tuesday, something different arrived. A letter addressed to me in careful handwriting. Return address showed a dorm room at the University of Minnesota nursing program. I opened it slowly. My hand shook these days, but not from emotion, just from the cancer eating everything it could find. Dear Mr. Richter, my name is Jennifer Monroe. I'm Sandy's daughter. I'm in my second year of nursing school. My mom never knew why you left her everything. She keeps saying it doesn't make sense, that she barely knew you. But I think I do understand. She told me about the nights she'd find you in the hospital parking lot. How you always seemed to be carrying something heavy. How she'd sit with you until you looked ready to drive home. She said you never talked much, just accepted her soup and let her stay. She stayed, even when it was hard, even when it didn't make sense. I want to stay too, for people like you, for people who need someone to sit with them in parking lots at 3 a.m. Thank you for seeing who my mom really is. Thank you for making sure staying means something. Jennifer, I folded the letter carefully and set it on the coffee table next to the ceramic soup cup Sandy had given me that first night. The cup had followed me home from the hospital, the only thing I'd kept from those Tuesday sessions besides my medication. Cream-colored with tiny blue flowers, hand-painted by someone who understood that small gestures matter most when everything else is falling apart. I picked up the cup and placed Jennifer's letter inside it. A message in a bottle, meant for no one and everyone. Then I reached for the small envelope I'd been carrying for months, the one I'd sealed at the kitchen table back in October, after finding out about Emily's IVF scheme. And to the boy I'll never meet. The letter I'd written to Emily's child, the boy she'd built with my money and another man's genetics, the child who would grow up never knowing that a dying stranger had paid for his existence. I held the envelope over the fire, not in anger, not in bitterness. Enclosure. The paper caught quickly in the flames, burned bright for a few seconds, then dissolved into ash and smoke. The words disappeared as if they'd never existed. Maybe that was better. The boy didn't need to carry the weight of what his mother had done. Didn't need to know he was born from betrayal and insurance fraud. He could just be a kid, Emily's kid, Chase's kid, whatever story they decided to tell him. I wasn't part of that story anyway, never had been. I was just the receipt, like I'd written in that letter. But Sandy? Sandy was part of a different story, a better one. The fire settled into steady flames. Outside, the snow was melting faster now, spring coming whether I was here to see it or not. I closed my eyes and listened to the silence of the empty house. Real silence, the kind you only find when you're not afraid anymore. Emily said she needed to feel alive. All those months ago, standing in that hospital room with divorce papers and plans for a new life. I just needed to die right. Some people run from endings, others walk toward them with purpose. Emily ran, Sandy walked. I chose my ending the same way I'd chosen my life. Quietly, deliberately, without asking for applause. Matt would come by tomorrow with the final paperwork. The house would go to Sandy too, along with everything else. She'd probably sell it, use the money for the Staying Kind Fund. That was fine. Good houses should go to good people. She said she needed to feel alive. I just needed to die right. Now I came.